This is, Ayer on Religious Language by Stephen Law in the Think Journal. But we're just using this, it off Stephen Law's blog. Yeah. Thank you. Like I said, my throat's a little still wonky. Aw, I just got gifted a subscription to Infernal. Thank you. Highlight. Cool. Okay. That's awesome. Okay, so here we go. And, as always, let me, any questions, feel free to ask. And if you're around at the end, we get to rate the article, and your review will go up on the web for time immemorial. Alright, so, religious belief. Oh, wait, we got questions. Or is that for vipers? Oh, yeah, the homunculus. Sensory data from your mouth is actually richer than that from your genitals. So in other words, maybe it is better to suck a dick than to get your dick sucked. Depends who you are. Religious belief is, of course, I just realized that's going to be in the YouTube video. Hi, YouTube. This is a not safe for work stream. Religious belief is, of course, criticized on a variety of fronts. Critics often focus on the truth claims of religions such as that God or gods exist, that Jesus rose from the dead, or that there is an afterlife. They insist these claims are unjustified. Some go further still, arguing not only is it not reasonable to believe these claims are true, it's reasonable to believe they are all false. Yeah. Yes. Now we're getting the good emotes. However, there's another much more radical kind of criticism to consider. This more radical sort of critics agree with the religious naysayer that the religious claims are not true. However, they also insist that neither are they false. In fact, according to the more radical critic, a sentence such as God exists fails to make any claim at all. Yeah, so this is sort of saying that there's a certain class of things you can talk about, and it doesn't even make sense to say the true or false. And sometimes in the literature, it's called, these are truth apt things, like, what's the temperature? Is it 82 degrees Fahrenheit here? Well, that could be true or false. That's a truth apt thing. And if you're saying God exists, we have no access to, knowing about that stuff, so it's not even truth apt. You can't even talk about it. It doesn't make sense. Okay. So, of course, if someone says God exists, it looks like they're asserting something capable of being true or false. The theist thinks they assert something true, the strong atheist who denies that God exists, something false. But according to the more radical critic, this appearance is deceptive. Someone who says God exists doesn't even get as far as asserting something, let alone something true or false. This more radical sort of atheist doesn't say God exists, makes an unjustified claim, or even a false claim. They say that God exists fails to make any claim at all. It's not even about this world. If you're making a claim, it's just entirely metaphysical, and you might as well go fuck off, because it's like asking how many angels dance at the head of a pin. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even make sense. It's not saying it's true or false. It's just whatever you want to believe. So, the philosopher A.J. Ayer is perhaps the best known critic of this more radical sort. According to Ayer, God exists fails to assert anything at all. But why? The key principle to understanding Ayer's criticism is a principle called the verification principle. A statement is meaningful if and only if it is verifiable, and maybe Ivan Neo would be interested in this sort of position on things, because he's more on the sciencey side. Verification is what matters. If it is in principle unverifiable, we can't go to heaven and see if God is there, it doesn't make sense to even say that we can do that, then it is not meaningful. Ivan Neo cracks knuckles. Yes. But see, this is the thing. It's not just saying that, God exists is false or wrong. It's saying you're not even speaking sensically at that point. When people are making claims about God, it's you're not even, you're just talking nonsense. It's not even it could be. Dover yay, no prover yay. Yeah. A statement is verifiable just in case there are either grounds for supposing it is true or grounds for supposing it is false. For example, the Eiffel Tower in France is verifiable. There are obviously plenty of grounds for thinking the statement is true. Here Brian says, well, then there's Popper saying that in principle, nothing perhaps save math is verifiable. Yeah, this is one of the difficulties. You can always say, well, the Eiffel Tower is in France, but then you could say, well, it may have just been blown up, it may have been moved, all sorts of things. You can't actually verify it. And even if you go to France and you were looking at the Eiffel Tower, you might be dreaming or something like that. So, in principle, metaphysically, but that's not what these people mean clearly, because they're not stupid. They know this. They know you might be dreaming. They're saying under the most normal, boring conditions, you can go check on the Eiffel Tower. It's not actually that hard. Now, save like a skeptical proposition. Well, like, you're right, but they want to just sort of like tamp down on the unlikely situations. So, author has myself verified, I've actually been to France, I've seen the Eiffel Tower, that the statement is true on a trip to France. I saw it with my own eyes. I did too. But even if you have not been to Paris, you can still verify the statement in many other ways by listening to other reliable people who have been to Paris and seen the tower, by checking other reliable resources such as geography books, maps of Paris, Google Earth, and so on. We just asked Shane here. When there's something about the world we don't know, we ask Shane McGinnis, and he knows. And so that's the only acceptable answer for this stream. If Shane says it's right, then it's right. Okay. We can also verify that some statements are false. Take, for example, the Eiffel Tower is in New York. Yes, exactly, unreal. Like, there may be a demon that is willing to, like, make it a delusion, us all delusional, and think that the Eiffel Tower is really in Paris when it's really in, like, New York. That this is false is pretty easily confirmed by various observations. See, again, we're not talking about unusual situations. You can just go observe it. It's like, it's okay that you can just observe the Eiffel Tower, or its lack thereof in New York. Notice that in order to verify a statement, you only need some grounds for thinking it's true. You don't need proof beyond all possible doubt, or even beyond reasonable doubt. Even just some evidence that falls short of establishing that is true, is still enough to verify it. So we're using a slightly modified notion of verification here. It's just that it's something that you could go and like basically find something out about it. And so this is the difference between the Eiffel Tower and God. The Eiffel Tower, and you're talking about the location of it, you can find a lot about the location, not that hard. You go try to find the location of God, there's nothing you're going to find. Like, it's just going to be very hard, or it's going to be very obscure. Also notice that the verification principle says that in order to be meaningful the statement must be verifiable. So they highlight the able. It doesn't actually have to be verified. There could be an observation that confirms that it's true or that it's false, and then it's verifiable, whether or not any such observation has or will be made. Ivan Neal says a meaningful proposition has to make a predication. Some descriptions of God are about gods you can find evidence against. That's fair. But again, you can always, like, when it's a god or something like religious like that, you can always make these excuses like, oh, God is preventing us from seeing or something like that. But this is the thing. Like, if you were talking about, can we go find things about the Eiffel Tower? Yeah, Russell's teapot is a good example. Like you can find a lot out about the Eiffel Tower, and like those things are in the realm of things you could do. When it comes to the God of the monotheistic, like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, much more difficult to like rule out certain things about God, because that's a very abstract God. Russell's teapot, on the other hand, is saying, look, if there was a God or something else, like a teapot, out in the solar system, beyond the resolution of our best telescopes, and we're like, well, there's a teapot out there. Well, how do you know? Well, it's always going to be, it's by definition beyond the resolution of our telescopes, because it's only like a small teapot. So you can't actually spot something that small flying around in the solar system. So it's like, well, what grounds do you actually have for making that claim? That is verifiable in principle, but like by saying we can't see it, then it stops being verifiable according to this sort of scheme. So like, you can't make the observation because by definition, Russell's teapot is too small to be seen by a telescope. And so it's like, maybe in the future we could go find out about it, but it makes no sense to make claims about such things like Russell's teapot when you have ruled out our ability to go look at it. And so this is a very similar argument to saying, hey, look, you can't verify anything about God, whereas you could verify something about the, in the sense of verify, about the Eiffel Tower. I always want to say, it's not fucking Russell's teapot. You can find the exact same fucking example in Ramsey. And Ramsey and Russell were friends, and I'm sure Russell read the paper that Ramsey wrote. He didn't call it about God, but Ramsey wrote a teapot thing when you're talking about unobservable objects. Like, it's like head smacking. That's like, why is Russell popularized it when it came to God, but it's, goddamn, it has to be Ramsey's example. And that's Frank Ramsey. For those who care. And you can find that at the end of Thoughts? Or is it one of the ones on Science? From now on, I'll call it Viper's Wiener. I mean, that doesn't sound very good because, in principle, it could not be observed, Vipers, and I don't think that's true, but okay. So that would be, you're making an unverifiable claim there, and we do not have to believe it. Okay. A.J. Ayer signs up to the verification principle, and he goes on to clarify two ways in which a statement can be verified. First, a statement can be verified by observation. If there are observations relevant to determining a statement's truth or falsehood, then it's verifiable. So there's just observations are all it takes. Ramsey's teapot is cursed, yeah. Okay. Unreal Brian says, didn't everyone forget about Ramsey until Missile worked to re-rep him? I don't know what the history is there. I don't think he was forgotten about. But I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know the history of analytic philosophy with respect to Ramsey being popular or not. I mean, Ramsey was one of the guys that went and got Wittgenstein to come back to philosophy. He's the guy that signed off on Wittgenstein's PhD. So it wasn't like he was already like friends with like Russell and Wittgenstein stuff. So Misak, I don't know. You see, I don't know that history, but he was already a somebody at that point, and so I just don't know. You might be right, but at the time in the 20s, he was already a important person in that group. For anyone who doesn't know, Frank Ramsey died at like the age of 26 in like 1927. He was this philosophical. He was this economist, really, and mathematician with a lot of philosophical bent. His brother was the Archduke of Canterbury, and Frank Ramsey was like this staunch atheist. There was a joke for a long time in philosophy called like Ramsey's razor. If you think you've said something clever in analytic philosophy, chances are Frank Ramsey already said it and said it better than you. Because like he just came up with a huge amount of really good ideas. And yeah. So, anyway. That's Frank Ramsey. And there was a recent biography of him that got published. And the worst part was that he died of something we can cure now. Because this was like fucking before, Jonas Salk or whatever. He's like, he died of like some stupid stomach bug. Missick works to make the case that Ramsey was familiar and respected and got ideas from Peirce. Oh, okay, maybe. Oh, Missick wrote that bio? Okay. He was the Black Sabbath of philosophy? Yeah, kind of. It was, DCI. When was that bio written? If it was recent, then that's not the case. That Missick, it repopularized him. He was already well known. Because I'm going off my, like, long time ago memory. Of, like, I mean, from Wittgenstein people. Ramsey was already well respected. Maybe he wasn't as well respected more generally, but from, like, hardcore analytics, and Wittgenstein people, like, he was well known. Yeah, like last year or two, which he's been talking about for a while. It's possible, but like I was told about Frank Ramsey when I was an undergrad like 20 years ago. So, yeah. He is Iron Man. Yeah. No, he died very quickly by, like I said, to something we can cure now, and it's sad because it was like one of these, like, if he had lived, it looks like we would be much further along. Like, just because he was kicking the crap out of, like, everyone else. That stuff. Aris? Wait, the dog's shitting all over the stream room? Wait, what's going on? Leptospirosis. It was like a stomach bug or something. I forget exactly if that's what it's called. Maybe. Okay. Yeah. So, it was like an ulcer. Like, Yeah, he died of like a stomach, blood infection due to like an ulcer in the stomach. Like something we can cure easily now. No one dies of this anymore, and it's like it killed him, which is too bad. Okay. For example, I can verify that the Eiffel Tower is in Paris by going and directly looking at it, or I can verify that my dog is in the garden if I can hear barking coming from there. However, there's another way a statement can be verified according to Ayer if the statement is true in virtue of meaning. So, for example, the sentence "all triangles have three sides" is true by definition. We need only grasp the meaning of that sentence in order to know that it is true. We don't need to go and observe any triangles. Similarly, we can know that not all triangles have three sides is false just by understanding what it says. We don't need to go and check any actual triangles. That all triangles have just three sides is something we can know by reflection from the comfort of our armchairs. Statements that are similarly true in virtue of meaning are called analytic statements. What about scientific statements such as that electrons exist, or that the Earth goes around the sun, or that the Earth is many millions of years old? Can these statements be verified? Okay, and this is why I brought up the Frank Ramsey. How do you actually know electrons exist? Because they are in principle, or at least for a long time, were in principle of not being observed. And so this is the exact same analogy as the teapot, because these were too small to be observed, but we can get indirect evidence about them. And this was the point of Frank Ramsey's paper when he brought up the teapot, actually. Hey, Tindarius, what's up? Hey, yeah, welcome in. We're talking about A.J. Ayer on religious language. Unreal Brian says, all triangles are love triangles when you love triangles. Pythagoras. Oh my dear God, why? Yeah. Doing good. My throat still hurts, but I think I'm a little bit better. I'm chowing down on cough drops, and I'm alright. So yeah. Which one what? AJ Ayer? That's the Ayer we're talking about here. Yeah, that's right. There is another Ayer, isn't there? Forgot about that. Oh, which god? Any god. Doesn't matter. Gods you can't observe. Actually, no, that's not true. Gods that are unverifiably observable. That means there's nothing that we can go do to observe that they exist. So, and that's why we're talking about scientific statements like electrons exist, because we can talk about particles that we cannot observe directly, only indirectly. So the question is, what's the difference between a god that some people will claim we can observe indirectly, just as like a particle that we claim we can observe indirectly? So. But this is why this actually gets to be an interesting question, because we all claim that electrons exist, but we can't. It's not like we can see electrons. You don't like look at your hand and be like, oh, I can see the electrons. It's not how it works. So what about scientific statements such as that electrons exist, or that the Earth goes around the sun, or that the Earth is many millions of years old? Can these statements be verified? Yes, they can. Of course, that electrons exist is not an analytic statement. It could turn out to be false. Yeah, because I mean, you could have like weird particles that don't actually exist. I meant you saying, "Oh my God!" Oh, well, all of them still, and all of it that still holds. But we can verify that electrons exist by observation. Of course, we can't directly observe electrons. Yeah, see, this is the direct observation, and it's not analytic they exist. They're far too small, but we can observe certain experimental results that do confirm that electrons exist. Yeah, so you can get like static electricity, and you can observe the charge on things will force everything away. Like if you rub your hair and you get a static charge on you. Gozer, yes. I am Gozer, the what of Zool, the keymaster of Gozer, yes. Yeah. Rub your hair, yes. Yes, Ivan. Frank says, every atom has its own personal angel moving it where it is supposed to go. Yeah, that's the thing. But like, so that means that all the atoms are actually indirectly showing that angels exist. So that's good to know. YHYW, well, I can't say anything. YHWH still a tongue breaker. What's a YHWH? Don't know. I can't talk anyway, but that's all right. Yeah. What was it? I just heard one. Irish wristwatch is a pretty good one. Yahweh? Okay. Yeah, Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Say that. The Christian Guide, yeah. Blasphemy. Yeah. Well, this was a requested paper by DCI. I mean, blasphemy. What are you gonna do? Okay, so electrons just need to provide us with some grounds for thinking electrons exist, so something does. Similarly, while we can't directly observe that the Earth existed millions of years ago, we can observe many things that confirm that the Earth is at least that old, such as sedimentary layers in the rocks beneath our feet and evidence of slow tectonic plate movement taking place over millions of years. It's easy to say that, however, I can just say wristwatch, because you're Irish, so they're all Irish wristwatches to you. Well, just pretend you're in the United States. Okay. And then say it. Hail Satan. No, hail Satin. No, like, you know, satin's very nice. You could, like, tuck something satin. Hail Satin. Very good. And then there was a joke back when Obama was in office, because there were people claiming that he was Muslim. And so there was a website, is Obama a muslin, with an N, not an M at the end. And muslin is a fabric. And so you'd click through and it would be like, no, he is not a fabric. Muslin is a very nice fabric or whatever it is. And Obama is a person. So, hail, like, yeah. Obama is not a muslin. Okay, at least some religious statements also appear to be verifiable. For example, that a certain miracle occurred might be confirmed by direct or indirect observation. That God created the entire universe around 6,000 years ago is also a verifiable statement. Observation has established it's false. But what about the statement, God exists? It is at this point that Ayer applies his verification principle to show that God exists is meaningless. For according to Ayer, God exists is not verifiable. The statement is not analytic, and there is no conceivable observational evidence that could count for or against it. Therefore, as Ayer says, God exists is meaningless. Ooh, thank you. Hey, Cinesemiax, thank you for, yeah. We've got more, some art. Let's go check it out. Oh, I know that electrons are, that they exist. Didn't Russell deal with this? Yeah, we discussed Russell a little earlier if you weren't here for that. Someone brought up Russell's teapot, I forget who, I think it was Vipers. Yeah. Any nudes this time? Oh my god, that's creepy. I've got something coming out of my nose. That is so weird. And, like, nice eye makeup, though. Yeah, my hair, like, I need a haircut, so, like, we're getting this sort of, like, extra fancy hair. That's kind of cool. Roulette, 455. Oh my god. I think I look, like, slightly Asian with the eyes, and, again, what's with stuff coming out of my, like, my mouth today? We've got, like, am I, like, closer to the mic or something? Maybe I changed something. And we got these, like, weird birds. Oh, dear. All safe for work, but weird, yes. I'm thinking on denoting and the current king of France thing. Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess that would be in the background here. I don't know if it'd be meaningless, but, like, because Russell just declared all those things false. So it wouldn't be, this is different from Russell, because Russell just said the current king of France is bald. There is no current king of France. He defaulted to the false. So that wouldn't, this is very, very related, but this is a different opinion. So yeah. Autofellatio is hard to coax out of it. We were discussing that earlier, but I'm good with the working around the sensors. I bet we can see the final not safe for work stash of me. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have to warn me because I don't want to get kicked off Twitch. Oh, look at this, like, sort of stylized thing. Looks like she's got, like, a microphone singing. I mean, that's kind of cool. Kind of because I have my mic right here. I mean, or that's a candy cane or something. I don't know what, but interesting. Like, this is looking more and more Asian. I wonder why I'm looking more and more Asian today. Yeah, like, well, I got the wings. It's not exactly Asian. And we got the interesting clockwork behind me. That's cool, too. Oh, my God. What happened to me? Now I'm gone into, like, Don Quixote or something. Oh, wow. Look at that. Like a little bit of a deco or something. That's kind of fun. Yeah, nice. Exactly. Not even that bad, yeah. There we go. Now we're getting back to the steampunk clockwork with the 1800 sort of look. Diesel, not really diesel punk, more steampunky look with all the gears and stuff, like the old style of mustache and goatee. Yeah. Oh wow. It's making me look even more female. All right. That's cool too. But yeah, this has kind of got the fantasy hat. That's neat. Just need some. The spacey one is lovely. Yeah, like some of these are cool. All right, and that's it for now. Thank you, Cinesemiotics. Appreciate it. I always love fan art. Like, this is one of these weird things in streaming that sometimes there's like fan art, and I've seen it other places, and you're just like, okay, and the streamer's always like, this is the coolest thing ever, and you're like, why? It's cool, but it's not. But it really is when you get it yourself. You're like, damn, that's awesome. Okay. Where were we? We were over here. Yeah. No grass, yes. It should grow a big old 70s mustache. If you go far enough back in philosophy roulette, during the pandemic I did, because I had like a kind of a beard I wasn't shaving, then I shaved off all of this stuff. If I had to guess, it may have been. But anyway, thank you again, Cinesemiotics, for the art, and we'll get back to reading this, but yeah. That's unverifiable, get out. Yeah. Okay. So, we're talking about, like, if you can't verify God or not, then it's meaningless. Notice that actually this is a rather unusual way of using the term meaningless. After all, we would ordinarily say that plenty of sentences that fail to make a claim are nevertheless meaningful. The door is shut clearly asserts something, but the questions is the door shut and the command shut the door do not make claims. They don't assert that something is the case. For that reason, they are unverifiable, but we wouldn't ordinarily say they are meaningless. Frank says, yeah, Ayer said that reports from reliable people count as evidence. Yeah, so, and Ivan Neo is a reliable person, therefore we can believe in the ghost of Ayer. Okay. We only take analytical and observable types here. Yeah, Continentals, be gone. But no, do not be gone. We like you. Continentals, if they are any of them watching, hi. Feel free to lurk. We don't bite that much. I have some like I was ranting about phenomenology in the positive. I like phenomenology. I think people are just terrible at it. So it's like I like some continental overlap, even if I'm more analytic myself. Yeah. So, but anywho, other expressions such as congratulations on becoming a father and down with the monarchy also fail to make claims, but we would not ordinarily say that these sentences are meaningless. So it's worth remembering that Ayer is using the term meaningless in a special way to mean does not assert anything or does not make any claim. Tindaris is like, Hegel is great. And Ivan's going to burst a blood vessel. So yeah. So, I mean, the point is that when you're trying to make a claim about the world that is unverifiable, then you're being meaningless, okay? It's not that, like, everything we say has meaning, like, please shut the door. That's a command. Like, shut the door. That's not meaningless in the sense that, like, it doesn't assert something about the world. It asserts that I want you to do something. It's a mental state representing a desire that I want you to shut the door. That does actually, you know, can be said to express something about me, but it's not saying anything about the world. It's about my feelings. But still, it's not like it's making a claim about the world. So, but like, it's the point here is that when you are attempting to make a claim about the world, like you're saying something about God, and that's the way the world is, but you can't actually verify it, then it's nonsense or meaningless. The real question is whether I believe God exists is meaningful. Well, that's the thing. If the whole God exists doesn't even make sense, then why would you believe something that doesn't even make sense? Now, that's where this is going. It's saying, look, you can't then have a belief about some nonsensical thing that doesn't really make sense. That's not how your beliefs generally work. Like, I believe, like, it might rain tomorrow, like, because the weather report or whatever says it's going to rain, so I believe there's a good chance of rain. It's like, okay, that's not the same thing as you believe in God existing. Like, it's a different class, because it's not, according to this verifiability, tomorrow's rain will be verifiable. God existing tomorrow is like, that's not under our normal, under the scope of things we can normally find out. So, but like, that's part of the discussion here, Frank, is that once you say, all right, it's meaningless that saying God exists, then you can't really talk about the belief about it either. Okay. So on Ayer's view, God exists is not false. Rather, it's meaningless. It looks like a claim is being made, but on closer examination, once we realize the statement is unverifiable, it turns out not to claim anything at all. Of course, religious people who say God exists think they are making a hugely important claim, but the truth, according to Ayer, is that God exists asserts nothing at all. So Ayer is an atheist of the radical sort. We have now set out Ayer's criticism of religious claims such as God exists. Ayer uses the verification principle to try to show that they fail to make any claim at all. They are in that sense meaningless. But is Ayer correct? Oh yeah, and I'm reading the Tinderis here. This is the I didn't have easy access to it, so the person just put this up on their blog. So you'll see the Stephen Law in the blog spot is the same Stephen Law in the Phil papers. Frank says whether it actually rains tomorrow doesn't verify whether the person believes it would rain tomorrow. No, but it would be verifiable. Like, you can check on rain things, you know? So you can have beliefs, but it would check on, like, rain is the sort of thing we can check on that, like, and so you can have a belief about something verifiable because that's the state of the world. If you have a belief about something that is not verifiable, that's not a state of the world, then you're talking about something that is completely metaphysical, and then why would you just have some sort of metaphysical arbitrary belief at all? Oh, wow. Preroll ads are now on. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay. You just were curious what it is exactly about? Oh, this is, we read some other stuff from Think recently. Ayer, Alfred Jules, yeah. Well, it may be in principle verifiable at some point. Like, say I have some belief about something we don't know yet, like some theorem we haven't proved. But we could say, hey, a bunch of mathematicians are working on it, and we think it's going to be proved one way or the other in the next few years. And so, you know, at least in some sense, those claims should be in principle verifiable, even if you don't know yet. Viper says the main problem with phenomenology is you can't start a cult with this shit. Yeah, but like you can make some, like, I don't know. Like Heidegger was apparently really like well liked by people, and so even though like nowadays people hate him because he was Nazi, but like apparently he was well liked, and he was like, he spoke about phenomenology. People, and also still has a very sort of cult-like following in philosophy. So maybe if you get good enough at whatever you're doing, you can start a cult stuff. It is hard. Yeah, Heidegger was, yeah, so there are problems there. Ivan says, I used to consider myself in Ayer's camp, logical empiricism, but now I consider myself a Bayesian, which has a lot to do with the same features. Yeah, you haven't gone very far, I don't think, Ivan. If you have a theory that makes no predictions, is it a theory at all? Yeah, and so this is the thing. So that's why you can believe in, like, certain things that you might not be able to verify yet, but, like, maybe in the future at some point. If you're having something about God that is, in principle, will never be verified one way or the other, you can't even get any information about it, that's the sort of thing they're, arguing for here. DCI says, no, a fart is only a fart if it smells. Well, I think that was the position of the other day. That would the paper in Think on the metaphysics of farts was they did say a fart had to smell, otherwise it was something else. I think like the stinkiness was like a integral part of the experience of being a fart. So I don't quite agree with that. I think like you could fart and it wouldn't maybe smell bad, or you just didn't notice it, but like it's not a fart, because they were separating out fart acts from the fart itself. I don't know if you can separate out the fart act. Like you could have like fart gas and that would be the fart, but it seems like if you separate that out from the fart act of being farted out, then maybe it's a little funky. But yeah, so yeah, this is in the Think journal, which does some more public facing philosophy. So these are like proper like professors of philosophy writing here, but like they're making it a little bit more accessible. So yeah. Okay, so is Ayer correct? And the author says, I don't think so. Author is an atheist, but not of Ayer's radical sort. I think that, certainly in most cases, people use the sentence God exists to make a claim. I just happen to think that claim is false. Okay, so this is just, author says no, it's just false that God exists. But like, not that it's meaningless. There are two ways in which you might criticize Ayer's argument. First, you might attack his principle, the verification principle. If you can show that the principle is false or at least unjustified, then his conclusion that God exists fails to make a claim is unjustified too. Second, you might argue that whether or not the verification principle is a reasonable principle, God exists is in fact verifiable. Let's look at each of these criticisms in turn. So you're not in agreement. Interesting. Okay. The criticism of the verification principle that is probably best known is it's not itself verifiable. Therefore, by its own light, it's meaningless. This is one of the criticisms you're expected to wheel out if you're answering an exam question on Ayer's religious language, for example. Okay, so is verifiability verifiable? And the answer, I guess, is no. However, it is true that the verification principle is unverifiable? Could there be observations that support or undermine it? Think about this argument. We start to learn language through observation. That is how language gets started, is something we can observe. In particular, as youngsters, we learn to associate words with things we can observe in our environment. We hear the word car said while our parents point at a car, for example. You think this is bogus? Well, let's see where we get to. It may be bogus, but we'll find out. But this suggests that the foundations of language are rooted in observation. So perhaps we can, after all, make a case for saying that when language is entirely detached from any possible observation, it fails to have any meaning. I'm not at all sure that this is a good argument, but it's not an absurd argument. In which case, perhaps we can make good observation-based case in favor of verification principle. Perhaps we shouldn't just assume that the verification principle is unverifiable. So this is the thing. You can't just assume it, and also there might be very good analytic reasons for taking in the verification principle. Like, by definition, maybe what we want to be able to do is this thing. And so many theories go with their first principles are always unverifiable. All of them, like quite a few. Like, you get to these unmoved mover things if you want to go back to Aristotle, or what came before the Big Bang. No one knows, but a lot of stuff start this way. The first thing is unverifiable, and then after that, or unverifiable, you can't verify, or what came before the Big Bang. So all these things start off with something that's on shaky ground, but maybe that's okay. You all have to have a concession there, and maybe this concession isn't so bad. Bogosity detected in the sector, Captain. Okay. Even if the verification principle is not self-condemning in the way it's widely supposed to be, that doesn't mean it's true or even reasonable. In fact, in his book Language, Truth, and Knowledge, Ayer uses the verification principle to try to show that God exists, fails to assert anything while never actually providing any reason to think that the principle is true. So, in that book, Ayer's argument depends on a highly contentious and unjustified principle, but then his conclusion is unjustified not true. Setting aside whether the verification principle is true, is it the case that God exists is unverifiable? Some suggest that we can know that God exists just by reflection on what God means. If God means greatest conceivable being, and that in turn requires that the being exists, then it's analytic that God exists. In which case, that God exists is verifiable. Yeah, you just had that little proof that God exists, so if all it takes is a proof, then there you go, you verified it. Alternatively, perhaps the very idea of God involves some sort of logical contradiction, a bit like the idea of a four-sided triangle, say, or a non-spatial mountain. If we can show that, then we can verify God exists is false, so it is a verifiable statement. What about verifying God exists by observation? Can that be done? Many people believe that there is good observational evidence that God does not exist, evidence provided by, for example, the depth of suffering we see in the world. If by God we mean a being that is maximally powerful, knowledgeable, and good, then there should be no pointless suffering in the universe. Yet there appears to be an extraordinary amount. Isn't this good evidence that there is no God? Others argue that belief in God, if not established conclusively by observation, is at least supported by observation. The fine-tuned character of the universe, for example, is supposed by some to provide us with at least some evidence that it was designed by such a divine architect, in which case, not only could there be evidence for God, there is evidence for God. Brian says, ontological arguments need to be yeeted from the company of good philosophy. Yeah, I've gotten much more ecumenical in my old age. I just see them as like exercises nowadays. I don't mind people making arguments for the existence of God. I mean, just what do you think you're going to do? You think you're going to prove it? Like, who do you actually think you are making a new argument for the existence of God? But I see them as an interesting history and tradition. And, like, if you want to do it, go have at it, Hoss. It's like, don't expect me to believe you. But, like, I find it as, like, an interesting practice within the history of philosophy. So, okay, so Viper says, a priori versus a posteriori. Yes, that's one of the distinctions here. And Ivan Neo says, I'm Batman. Yeah, but I mean, again, like, arguing through logic that God exists doesn't seem to do most gods justice. Like, oh yeah, if this stuff, therefore God, and then so, like, and that stuff. It's like, really, that's the stuff you take to prove God exists? Some weird little argument? Yeah, okay. Okay. So Ayer's argument is also ambiguous. Yes, we do like it a posteriori semiotics. So it's ambiguous. What exactly counts as an observation? The theologian John Hick suggests that God exists can be confirmed after we die, potentially, for we may get to meet God. This is what Hick calls an eschatological verification. Does Ayer's verification principle allow for that sort of verification? Would this count as an observation? That's not entirely clear. Yeah, so if you get to meet God after you die, then it is verifiable. It's just you can't tell anyone that's alive. Interesting. Ayer's argument for the radical kind of atheism that says God exists is not false, but fails to assert anything that at all looks, on closer examination, to be a rather miserable failure. Okay, so he says it's a failure. Didn't like it. But it's, it's an interesting way of going about things. Can you actually go verify it? He just says no. This is like, it doesn't even make sense in the end. Unreal says, for one thing, ontological arguments in particular are not offered in good faith. It's meant to shore up something that the believer is committed to believing in any case. Yeah, I almost always, like, almost all of them I've ever seen, I agree that, like, that is actually what's happening. It's an apologetics. They're trying to give a rational reconstruction for their faith. And yeah, and so now the question is that done in bad faith? Are they trying to prove anything to anyone else? Yeah, probably you're right. It's bad faith. But, like I said, I see it as an interesting practice. I don't mind it. It's like, you want to go do that? Go do that. It's like, if that's how you want to spend your time. And if you come up with a good answer, I want to see how you went about it, because that might show something interesting too. DCI says, I'm kind of with Ayer on this, and that making claims or statements that can be verified are meaningless. I don't think I follow the arguments against it. Yeah, I'm mostly okay with, like, this sort of thing. I think there are a lot of things that are kind of meaningless. Like, you're making claims about stuff you can't find, and maybe you have to go a different route. Maybe sort of the Russell's teapot route, not this sort of verificational thing, because we don't really know what this is, like, serious though. We don't exactly know what observation means. Like, you can, as was said in chat and in the thing, maybe you can make an argument for the existence of God, ontological arguments. That would also be evidence if you had, like, an argument for something existing. Like, it may not be the best evidence, it might be indirect evidence, but that's the same sort of indirect evidence we have for a lot of scientific propositions. And, like, yeah, we're very, very certain electrons exist at the moment, but there's a lot of subatomic particles right now that we don't have a lot of good evidence for. And so maybe we don't have a lot of great evidence for God, but we still believe that, certain subatomic particles exist on weak evidence. And maybe that's the same thing. If we had a better proof of God's existence, we would have a proof of God's existence. And that would be just like the very hard to detect particles. What's ontological? Sorry, guys. Ontological arguments are arguments for the existence of God. I mean, they're called ontological arguments for whatever reason, historical, but it just means the existence of God when it's ontological argument. Yeah. Frank says, I'm also with Ayer, but calling it meaningless instead of a new word seems kind of deliberately needling. Yeah, see, this is the thing. I think these sorts of, this sort of position can be propped up a bit better. But, like, this paper was, a nice short paper on what Ayer had to say, which is a unique position within the sort of debate. And so, like, it's not a bad, like, sort of, like, thing to talk about. Unreal Brian said I would go with the pragmatist, and I suspect Wittgenstein would say something similar. Meaning is an empirical question. Does it communicate something to the hearer or reader. See, that's the thing. Ayer is like post-Wittgensteinian. He's probably in that tradition, and he was just, looking at stuff in this sort of way. How is it being used? What is the pragmatic use of it? And that's kind of like he said this verification thing, and that's wishy-washy in the end, as Stephen Law pointed out, but maybe there's some better way to do it. All these arguments on whether God exists or not are a waste of time, right there in chat. So that's the thing. What if God was one of us? What if God was Viper's gratitude? What if maybe God is Viper's gratitude? There, now we've evidence. Viper's just claim to be God, therefore we have evidence one way or the other way about it, and there we are. Easy peasy. So, all praise and gratitude to Vipers. Amen. I think the standard in physics is 5 sigma. Yeah, so that's the thing. You have to have standards. But again, the standard in physics is like, they have whatever it is. The standard for other stuff is different. And so it's like, there are theorems in math that we prove. That has nothing to do with sigmas in physics. So like, there's different standards, and then we believe the theorem in math. And so maybe the proof for the existence of God would be closer to the mathematical proof as opposed to the physical, whatever the sigma stands for, significance amount. Ivan says partly true. Ask average people what God is, and they'll say it's a bloke who will give you an afterlife and a garden and all that rubbish. Yeah, so like there, evidence. If there was a God, he wouldn't let me claim to be God. How do you know? But that would mean you were Vipers. As an all-powerful God, you're saying you'd limit yourself from doing something, but then you wouldn't be all-powerful. So clearly you could do that. Ivan says, but a lot of hard apologetics is quite detached from the folk definition of God. Yeah, fair. Frank says, if there was a God, he would strongly approve of you claiming to be God, Vipers. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't Vipers approve of Vipers claiming to be God? That makes no sense, Vipers. I'm with Frank on this. DCI says, no God just warned us to be wary of you, Vipers. Yeah. Brian says, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence attributed to Carl Sagan, Christopher Hitchens, and others. Okay. I generally don't like these sorts of like big things like, okay, you can dismiss the thing if you have no evidence and blah, blah, blah. If you are going to make an argument, your premises and your conclusion have to have like some sort of relative strength. Like if I'm going to claim like up is up and down is down, there's nothing to that. Like therefore up, therefore down, like whatever. But if I'm claiming therefore God, what is going to be the premise that is going to lead to you to change your mind if you weren't going to do that? You would need some very massive amount of evidence. So it would have to be extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but it's extraordinary like claims require extraordinary premises, like the argument and the argument structure. That means like if you're going to argue for something, you need to have like a perfect argument with perfect premises. And I can tell you that thing doesn't like exist. Like it's just very hard. And so it's like, yeah, miracles. Even if there was a miracle, how would you know it wasn't aliens or something? It wouldn't be God. There's a million things it could be. Yeah. So, Tindarius, yeah, exactly. If someone claims there's God, the burden of proof, it lies on them. Exactly. Is Ayers close to Beijing then? I don't think, for all I know, I don't know the historical relation between the two. They may be close. I don't know. But like, it's a good question. Ivan Neo says he started off closer to Ayer, then moved over to Beijing. Maybe Ivan Neo knows, more of the details there. I don't know. But, that's the thing. This level of verificationism, verifiability, not verificationism, this verification principle, as Stephen Law showed, you can poke holes in it. It's not going to be that hard to find ways around verification. Maybe Bayesianism is a better version of that for whatever reason. Maybe it isn't. But yeah, so, okay, so Ivan says not explicitly. I didn't know of any, so it's like I didn't want to make a claim one way or the other, but I don't think there is. Yeah. Wrote. Yeah, so, hey, hold up, DCI. Let's get the, here we go. Now, if you do a little thing, you can do it. It's not Nog Brain Dance, it's just regular brain dance. So anyone in chat is now, we're going to review the article. Feel free to use the emotes there, copy and paste them. The description of what they mean is on screen now. So DCI says brain dance. Brain dance is like, did this have fun ideas? DCI says yes, and yay, it was a good article. It was worth reading. Grapes is for big claims that shriveled up. This didn't make a whole lot of big claims that shriveled up. It evaluated the Ayer's claims about meaningless statements. And so that's that. Navel gazing, is it only for academics? Again, maybe, because who cares about AJ Ayer and what he said? But, you know, it was the sort of claims being made about God. People care about that stuff. So I mean, maybe you want to call the navel gazing, maybe, or not. Ouroboros, deep ancient mysteries, big ideas. Perhaps you'd say that too. Maybe not. I don't know. Scream, was this existential or artistic drama? Nah, I didn't think. We weren't talking about like value. We were talking about claims, like analytic claims about God. So Viper said, yeah, a little bit too navel gazy for Vipers, and did not like it. And Vipers also called it golden turd. He didn't like the argumentation. Thought it was more presentation than substance there. Unreal Brian gave it a half and half, okay? And the knife is for slicing and dicing arguments. So what am I going to do? What do I think about this one? You know, the presentation of it was kind of nice. Stephen Law, I think, did a nice job getting some ideas out there that we could talk about. So we're going to get a brain dance on this. AJ Ayer's the Star Lord of philosophy. Also gonna get a, what else we're gonna say? This was like a sort of a public paper. It was kind of loosely done. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. He didn't really slice and dice the arguments. He just pointed some stuff out. Yes, I think this is a split pack on this. I'm going to give it a vote yay because it wasn't poorly done. It was all right. It's not going to get like, this is not going to get like major thumbs up from me. But like, it's going to get a thumb up. And you know what? Was it all style, no substance? No, I think it had some substance there, but we're going to go with, we can just actually call it a Nog Navel. I'm with Vipers on this one. So yeah, but it's a little silly, I think, this paper, because at the end it just kind of hand waved at these philosophical arguments, and it's like maybe the golden turd would be better. I'm not sure, but it's like kind of hand waved at it, and the golden turd is more about style. This wasn't really style over substance. This was kind of just like a little bit of academic, you know, I just felt it got a little, more self-concerned. It was just like, I disagree with AJ Ayer, and like, here's some ideas I'm throwing at you. So it wasn't really style over substance. It's just sort of, you know, I'm a philosopher, I'm going to say stuff. And that's why it's getting the academic-y emote from me. But anyway, not that bad. Like, I thought it was like, we got a little bit of a split on some of this. Is it ever worth rereading papers in the future to see if stances have changed? No, DCI. I usually, quite often, I will go back and be like, you know, I was unfair in spots. Like, I was a little too fast one time or another time. If anyone hasn't voted, get your votes in now, because it'll be over. But, basically, you know, I'll realize I made a mistake, but it's not worth going back over. So, like, yeah, I'll realize I screwed something up, or I was unfair, or I said the wrong thing. Not a big deal. These are, as always, these are first read-throughs. Like, it is. I've never read this before. So, there we go. But thank you all for being here for this one.